Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, I want to welcome Michael Orrell. Michael is a retired graphic designer and student of metaphysics. In 1990, he photographed 10 UFOs while hiking with friends in the San Diego backwoods. And he found a pattern in one of the objects that also appeared to be present on numerous other UFO photos, as well as countless ancient artifacts. From there, his story became one of the most compelling pieces of evidence of the UFO phenomenon. Mike, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good, Chris. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I thought we'd start with your story. Tell us what happened in July of 1990.
Well, it really is an interesting story, and it started basically in 71 when my father, who was a San Diego police officer, died as a result of a dune buggy wreck. And because of his death, I really wanted to know the truth behind the death experience, and I found my way to metaphysics, which not only talked about that, but revealed the origin of UFOs and aliens, claiming that they are emissaries from God who seeded our planet, and they literally have come sometimes from different galaxies based on different elements, like silicon, and we're the carbon environment. Well, decades after learning this, it's not even in my mind when I'm hiking with two friends on a photographic expedition, and we found our way to rural San Diego and this park called Inyaha Scenic Campground. And at the Scenic Spot 7, Chris, it was a beautiful 18 miles of the San Diego River Valley stretching away in the distance. And I put my camera down on this brick wall that was designed to hold this periscope device, and I squeezed off one photograph. And then we got out there because it was late. I had no idea how far it was back to the parking lot. And it wasn't until 2 weeks later, when I got the 35 millimeter film developed, that I noticed a strange pattern of dot in the background of this one photograph I took at Scenic Spot 7. And I did have my own darkroom. I had won an award for one of my pictures that I had developed myself. And I blew these objects up, and it was clear to me that there was no wings like in a bird or ailerons like on a plane. And I eventually decided that I had actually taken a 1 in a billion photograph of UFOs, and I contacted the San Diego UFO Society, who told me that I had to have the objects blown up to grain, which I couldn't do in my own enlarger. And that's when I went downtown and told them what I needed to have done. And in the meantime, while that was getting processed, I started recording anything and everything on UFOs, Chris. And back in 1990, there was some great shows. Arthur C. Clarke's World of Mysterious Powers and Terra X, and this one show called Secrets and Mysteries featured an astronaut's photograph, James McDivitt, that apparently was lost by NASA, but it was an incredible projecting acorn shape. And I just filed that away in my memory. And I also recorded the September 1990 airing, the first ever, of the famous Kecksburg UFO event that happened in Pennsylvania. And it was also an acorn-shaped craft that eyewitnesses discovered back in 1965. Well, eventually I got my film back from Giant Photo, who had enlarged the objects, took a picture, and enlarged it again. And wow, it was just amazing that these objects were clearly in formation, and 3 of them on the left were in a perfect triangle formation, and they were stretched out, 9 of them, towards the west side of the valley, where there was a single craft. And I had that enlarged as well. And lo and behold, when I looked at it, the left contour, Chris, was shaped exactly like the acorn-shaped craft from the Kecksburg UFO, except it had an anomaly. 2/3 up the left side was a clear spike-like projection that I figured must have been some sort of communication device, because the object could clearly be seen moving right to left to join the formation. Well, when I saw that spike-like projection, I realized I had just seen that in one of the programs I recorded. And sure enough, when I found that UFO by James McDivitt, it exactly matched my projecting acorn shape. And that's when I really started getting into this and started cleaning whatever information I could find on aliens and UFOs. And I wound up finding more UFO photographs that had that same peculiar spike-like projection, 2/3 up the left side. And then I hit a gold mine. I went to a bookstore that's no longer there in La Jolla, and flipping through a book called Markings by Marilyn Bridges, on pages 9 and 27, there it was, huge projecting triangles at Nazca. And it suddenly dawned on me that that was the signature of aliens, these projecting triangular shapes. And the rest, as they say, is history, pal. I wound up winning front page coverage in every newspaper in San Diego. And in 2006, I did a CBS interview with Channel 8, local affiliate, KFMB. And we actually went up to the same spot, Chris, where I took the UFO photograph. And they were intrigued because I had found 2 weeks later, I went back to the same spot and I photographed birds and planes in the same spot. And as I turned to leave, there it was, this incredible boulder that looks just like an alien's head. And some people claim that I've chiseled that out, but no. Right behind the spot I took what may be the best UFO photograph in history is a boulder shaped like an alien's head. So sure enough, the CBS crew demanded that I lead them all the way up there, and they filmed me with the boulder, and at the actual spot I filmed UFOs. Well, interestingly enough, 8 years later, this interview on CBS won first place at the 4th annual McMinnville, Oregon UFO Festival. And I was surprised, but at the same time I realized this is the real deal. I mean, this isn't a digital photograph that can be easily manipulated. This is a 35 millimeter negative that has been authenticated by not only Dr. Bruce Maccabee, naval photo analyst, but numerous other experts, some of them around the world. So in my opinion, Chris, this is exactly what your website is all about, Forbidden Knowledge News. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. And, you know, I am just a graphic designer. I'm not a astrophysicist or a scientist, and that's part of the problem with getting press, because I lack the credentials. However, it's the evidence that speaks for itself.
Right.
And you've had a look at it, right?
Yes, it is very compelling, you know, especially for the time frame and the type of equipment that was used. It is very compelling. I'm going to put a shot of it up on the screen here while we're talking so everybody can see it. Now, the triangular shapes you were speaking of, what are your theories on what that could possibly mean?
Well, the triangular shapes, the projecting triangular shapes that I discovered at Nazca, for me, it clearly indicated that this was the signature of aliens, because these gigantic geometric shapes are perfect in their design and their layout. And the ones that are created by the native Nazca people, they're obvious. It's sort of like the crop circle phenomenon. The authentic crop circles are perfect geometric patterns with no flaws, whereas the ones that Doug and Dave did and some other amateur crop circle artists, they're obviously made by humans. So the idea is aliens want us to know of their existence. And that's why I believe that they're the same ones who made the basic Nazca lines, as well as the authentic crop circles. And in my research, I found, sure enough, right next to Stonehenge, a gigantic acorn-shaped mound. And it's clear to me, once again, that that is their signature. And they want us to know about their existence. And I found the same thing at Petra. Not that I was ever there, but through National Geographic, there is clearly a projecting acorn shape on the Treasury building that matches not only my UFO photograph and astronaut James McDivitt's photograph, but as people will see on my Facebook page, which they can see. It's open to the public under Michael Orrell, Orrell. As it turns out, on the face of the moon, which always faces us, there is a gigantic projecting acorn shape that's known as Mare Serenatis, and it exactly matches our acorn-shaped UFOs. Now, there's a lot of people who are going, well, that's a coincidence, and yeah, they do look alike, but there's no way aliens made it. Well, it just so happens the first thing you'll see on my Facebook page when you open it up is the actual transcript of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin as they encountered UFOs lined up on the opposite side of a crater, and that's when Capcom stopped the audio for 2 minutes. Well, thankfully, I'm a book collector because that's how I find forbidden archaeology in these books. Well, fortunately, one of these books called Celestial Rays had the actual transcript of this conversation, and it was recorded by hundreds of ham radio operators. So the idea is UFOs are definitely on the moon. I believe they have the ability to make these giant markings on the moon, and Mare Serenatis is not the only one. But like I said, I found numerous UFO photographs that have this strange projection 2/3 up the left side, and I believe that I'm the first human to find this lost alien code that has literally unlocked the UFO, Nazca line, and crop circle mysteries. Because, Chris, when you see my website on Facebook, you're going to see all countless ancient artifacts from Egypt, from the Mayans, who all had contact with UFOs, which is evidenced by these projecting triangles, as well as the fact that I'm sort of a professional at finding faces. And one of the most important and phenomenal faces I discovered, which is also on my Facebook page, is the fact that in Teotihuacan, the famous Pyramid of the Sun, one of the most fantastic pyramids on Earth, happens to be a purposely designed human head. It clearly resembles a human head. And I was surprised that when I first saw this, that Leonard Nimoy on his program In Search Of did not point it out. And apparently I was the first human to find that as well. So it's like, man, everybody's left this open for me to just walk in and grab a book, and every page I turn could lead to another discovery. It's a lot of fun, I got to tell you.
That's very interesting. Now, how do you think all of this relates to us as humans on planet Earth?
That's a very good question, and here's the answer. As it turns out, mankind is facing a catastrophe of biblical proportions in the much overdue shift of our magnetic poles. The 172nd shift of our magnetic poles is over 230,000 years overdue. And even aliens have been warning us in crop circles, and particularly a crop circle called the Winchester crop circle, telling us that the circuit is closing, that we need to believe, and that they oppose deception. Well, my idea is, and I believe this is absolutely true, especially with California getting rocked by earthquakes lately, that mankind needs to make contact with aliens, because the earth is about to literally physically roll over, just like Edgar Casey predicted. It's going to happen in the blink of an eye, and it's actually in Revelations, chapter 6, verses 12 through 14. It talks about how islands will disappear and every mountain moved from its place. And that describes the physical rollover of our planet. And I believe that the Hopi prediction of a day of purification is nearly at hand, and that aliens are showing up in massive numbers in their craft all over the world to help mankind gently walk into the fact that we're about to be accepted into the Interplanetary Trading Society, which the world's greatest the greatest abductee. Anyway, she saw a star map that predicted or talked about how aliens have trading routes between stars. And it's Betty Hill. Betty Hill had the guts to ask these aliens where they're from, and they showed her. So I think mankind is heading for the next phase of human evolution, and those people that are peaceful and have higher goals, they're going to be literally raptured up into a cloud, just like in Revelations. And those unfortunate people who are left on Earth, they're going to suffer 500-mile-an-hour winds. And if you think it's tough there in Louisiana right now with all the flooding, mankind hasn't seen this kind of devastation. And there's evidence that it's happened before, Chris. We've got dozens of baby mammoths who were flash frozen and had summer food in their stomach. I believe these animals were there when the earth flipped over and they found themselves in a ice and snow climatic environment that froze them, just flash frozen. Well, I believe this is why aliens actually have allowed me to stumble upon this lost alien code and are backing me in my efforts to get planet Earth caught up to speed. And that's one reason I appreciate, Chris, you invited me onto Forbidden Knowledge News, so I can share this information and lead people to my Facebook page where they can make the observations and decisions for themselves.
You know, it's very interesting that you are talking about this magnetic reversal because, you know, I cover this. I cover the rapid changes that have been happening on our planet in the past 5 years. I mean,
I saw that on your website.
Yeah, the earthquake and volcanic activity is through the roof. They've had mainstream coverage of our magnetic north moving. So now you also said that there will be people raptured by these extraterrestrials. Talk a little bit about that. You said people that now, you know, what kind of people are going to be raptured and what type of extraterrestrials are going to be doing this?
Another good question. Now, as part of our historic past on Ancient Aliens, which I watch religiously, that there have been numerous groups of humans suddenly missing on Earth. This happened to an Eskimo village where people found that pots were still hot and everybody in the village was gone. This also happened to the Anastasi. They were suddenly missing. No gravestones of them were found. Well, it's my belief, and this is what metaphysics says, basically, Chris, that indeed the spirit created the flesh before there were any planets or any galaxies. It was just a spirit. And there was a need, apparently, for mankind to experience what it's like to be God. And we are all the fullness of God. We have the power of life and death. And at the end of our life, physically, we will be asked what it is we have done for our life, that you can show this spirit guide that accompanies us. And apparently, not a whole lot of people have heard about the Akashic records, but this library, somewhere in time and space, which I believe was created by aliens, contains all the past, the present, and the probable future. And I believe this is what some of our great scientists and visionaries have tapped into, like Nostradamus, Tesla, and Edgar Cayce. So the idea is that they see our probable future. And I am more than convinced that aliens who are our benefactors, who actually helped create us, which is evidenced by a remarkable shift in DNA back in the Cro-Magnon days, that they want us to succeed, but the next evolutionary phase is going to be with aliens and extraterrestrials, and they do have a set of standards. So if you think that you have the right, because of your political or religious background, to kill any human for any reason, then they're going to accept that as how you would treat them. And guess what? You're going to be left behind. Now, I'm a very peaceful guy. I'm as normal as the guy next door, and I just happen to have stumbled upon this. But I'm under the impression they don't expect perfection. They just want somebody who is willing to learn, who knows their place in the universe, and is not racist. So if you're a racist, even against your own race, you got a problem, because that automatically means that you have something against aliens, who are obviously going to look different than us. And, Chris, apparently there's different kinds of aliens, like the reptilians apparently are not very sympathetic towards mankind, and they treat us a little rough and gruff. But these grays, these emissaries, the ones that tuck back in to bed after they abduct them, these are the ones that are in charge, which is why we are not slaves to some alien race that want us to harvest gold. I believe it's all preordained by all that is, which is another name for God, who sees that our time is almost up and that mankind needs to have as much input and information on UFOs to make positive decisions, because it literally is up to each and every individual on what your belief system is, because that is going to make or break your life, which is why I posted everything on my Facebook page for the public. It's not to make money, even though I wrote a book, which, by the way, is called Aliens from Above, The Last in Line, which documents my historic discoveries that include, by the way, the largest rock face, the natural rock face in the world I discovered before I ever took my UFO photo. It's this giant, mile diameter, man-made face on a local mountain. And it's one front page news here in San Diego. And my idea is that it's linked to my UFO photograph, because my single craft was hovering over this giant face on Alcohol Mountain, which is on my Facebook page. And it should be intriguing for your listeners to check this out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all interconnected.
Now, before we move past this magnetic reversal, is your theory that it's going to be a cataclysm that would wipe out all the humans remaining on this planet that aren't taken by these aliens?
Yes, I believe that it's going to be a physical crustal displacement. Now, there's a lot of scientists who are going to say, oh, it's just the inner molten iron core, and that's the only thing that'll be shifting. Nothing's going to happen to the planet. Well, they're guessing, and I don't think their guess is correct. I think it's going to be a physical rollover. Like I said, it's mentioned in the Bible that islands will disappear and every mountain move from its place, and that it's actually going to be a good thing for our planet, because we need to reboot. It's going to completely redo our atmosphere. I think it's going to clean the oceans, and it's going to be a brand new environment for anybody who's lucky enough to be chosen to be part of the next human phase of evolution. And I believe it could literally happen any day, and it could actually happen in the middle of the night. They may come as thieves in the night, because apparently not even the aliens know the exact moment that this shift is going to happen. And as part of my theory, Chris, that the reason why we're over 230,000 years overdue is directly due to alien intervention. And when they created, and helped create, I should say, the Giza pyramids by moving mass with sound, they purposely located those pyramids right on the center mass of Earth's land mass. And I believe that that helped stabilize the annual rotation of our Earth that was supposedly supposed to end our planet on December 21st, 2012. And it finished its 26,000-year cycle on that date, but because of alien intervention, which not only include the Giza pyramids, but underneath Stonehenge is a gigantic magnetic force, as well as all these megalithic structures around the world. And as people have witnessed, UFOs are flying into volcanoes and the sun, and they are doing everything in their ability to forestall the shift. But guess what? They've done all they can. It's got to happen, or the Earth might explode or die. It's got to reverse its polarity. And it's happened 171 times, according to volcanic core samples, which we can see the magnetic poles have reversed. So I've been living with this thought for decades after I first discovered in metaphysics that a polar shift is going to happen. And all of a sudden, I've been handed this evidence for the existence of UFOs because I was questing for knowledge. But what I didn't know, it's a trap. Once you find this stuff, guess what? You're now obligated to share it. And I might mention that to anybody else who sees what I posted on my Facebook page. You're walking into a rabbit hole that you're going to be responsible for because you can't walk back from seeing this. And that includes what I believe is the signature of God, which I've actually posted on my Facebook page, and it's called Bernard 68. It's a gigantic gaseous cloud in the galaxy, and it's shaped just like a projecting acorn shape, and it's going to flip you out, folks, when you see this. So be prepared, have a glass of wine or a doobie or whatever, and then go through my Facebook page and soak it in. It's going to take a while to go through all this stuff because I've been cataloging this for decades, and I just celebrated the 29th anniversary of the day I took the best UFO photograph in the history of ufology. July 1st, that happened.
Yeah, and you said, that this would basically wipe out all humans. Now, we know that these magnetic reversals have happened in the past, and it may have wiped out a good portion of humanity, but there were survivors. Is it going to be that way, or is the Earth going to be uninhabitable, or do we have a chance to rebuild after this?
I've had some people ask me that. What if we find a cave somewhere to hide? And, apparently in the past that might have worked, but the idea is when the Earth reverses its polarity, there's going to be different land masses, and some of them are going to be underwater. Apparently, Hawaii is going to be completely submerged, and that's pretty scary. My dad was born in Honolulu, and I would want those people that live on Hawaii to survive this event, and apparently the only way, I believe, is going to be up. The only way out is up. That's why we need to make contact with extraterrestrials, and they are giving us every opportunity, and they have asked us to believe. Now, there's a lot to be said about the act of believing, because in metaphysics, it talks about the importance of thoughts. Your thoughts have substance, and when you think a thought, it goes out to coordination points, it comes back as a material manifestation, and let me give you an example of that. Back in 2004, I had been featured in a magazine locally, and 3 days later, numerous eyewitnesses reported that a UFO was tailing a Channel 10 helicopter. Now I thought to myself, yep, thousands of people have read my UFO story, which is very positive. And next thing you know, it manifested this UFO event here in San Diego, which, by the way, has been starring in this latest revelation by our military, who released these video footages, Chris, of the UFO encounter off of San Diego's coast back in 2004 of these Navy pilots filming these objects that left no heat trail, that maneuvered at speeds that would have killed a human. And the government, who apparently is actually working with aliens, knows that contact is inevitable, and I think they are trying to slowly feed this information to humanity so that we can be prepared. There's a lot of people that aren't prepared for it mentally, and we need to get ready for this. I'm ready right now. I am ready.
Do you think that's what's happening right now with these leaked documents, that they're trying to slowly bring disclosure to us? So because, they know all this is going to occur. They know there's going to be this alien intervention. Is that what you think is going on with this these leaks?
Yes, I do. And that's why I'm convinced that, I've tried to contact presidents and the governments. There's nobody that's not on my list to contact about my story. And I haven't been bothered at all. I think they know what I'm doing. They appreciate what I'm doing and want me to continue forward. Because, like I said, this is about to happen. It's going to happen in our generation. And part of that is because, according to metaphysics, the baby boomer generation, of which I am a part of, a lot of us are reincarnated Atlanteans who decided to come at this point in time in history to help change mankind's mindset. Because as soon as we start believing that these aliens and UFOs exist in mass, well, that's when it's going to happen. That's the quantum theory effect. You have to imagine and pretend that you are living in that circumstance, and it happens because you have created that with your thoughts. And believe me, in my book, I talk all about that because I've had some really extraordinary experiences, including telepathy, Chris, which I've experienced a couple times accidentally. And, that's part of the problem with finding out all this stuff in metaphysics that, you don't have to die to meet God. You can go into a meditative trance, exit your body with your consciousness, which is the only true vehicle, and go to the spirit world and actually visit other planets and come back in time for lunch. Now, when you find out that's a possibility and that, hey, we're not trained to do that because our education system doesn't include that, then you realize, gosh, we're missing out. That we need to re-examine all of our former beliefs, including in the Bible. Let's get straight with what's real. What is the truth? And I'm a truth seeker, and I know you are too. So I actually changed my religion from being a Catholic to adopting the Native American religion, which is truth and loyalty. And believe me, when you find the truth, you have to be loyal to it, which is what I'm doing right now, actually. And my code is also Native American, bravery and generosity. I also practice that as well. So I would say to everybody who sees my Facebook threads, there's going to be some controversial religious thoughts that have evidence that's going to probably upset some people, and yet other people are going to go, yeah, that makes sense. And that's what I'm doing. I'm out there.
I'm right there with you with every with the content on my videos. Just as controversial.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, yeah, it's quite fascinating. The abilities that humans could have if they just focus on their potential. Human consciousness has, I believe, unlimited potential, and that's part of the reason they suppress us so much with everything they're doing. From food, water, and air to the media. They don't want us accessing our true potential as humans.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately what happened with my church upbringing. And something happened when I was 11 years old at my church where I went to parochial school at. I happened to look down from the balcony while singing my church hymn just in time to watch one of the four ushers pocket a handful of cash out of the tithing basket. And needless to say, as an 11-year-old, that shocked me into realizing that, hey, all is not what it seems. And the universe, I believe, wanted me to see that, and it prepared me for seeing my dad die in front of me 2 years later, so that I started making up my own mind on things, which was what the universe wanted. And that's why I believe they posed for this incredible UFO photo that I took accidentally July 1st, 1990. They knew that I would not disregard this photograph and those objects as a technical glitch or birds and planes like my dumbass friends did. No, I had a background that nobody else I grew up with, Chris, had. When I went to college, nobody knew about metaphysics. And this is in the 70s, I took this photograph when I was 33, and I'm 62 now. And believe me, I'm aging out. I can feel it. And the last thing I want is to have this die with me. And it's an incredible story. I believe it's going to help lead mankind into the next phase of human evolution, along with everything that everybody else is doing. I mean, just up the street in Encinitas, we have To the Stars Academy, who is working on getting this information out. And thanks to their work, we got the Navy UFO video, which is all over the internet and is a fantastic confirmation that we are not alone and that we need to start making some positive moves towards that and acting appropriately as if we want to be part of that intergalactic trading community, which, by the way, will replace this monetary system that we have invented for ourselves, which is actually pretty pathetic. I mean, I got people, families living on the street right down below me, and it's all because of this monetary system. Now, apparently, this trading system that interplanetary societies who achieved that have devised this wonderful bartering system, which we're going to be part of. And I believe all the militaries of the world are going to be converted into away teams as we set up trading colonies on these already established planets full of sentient beings. And this is going to actually end the disease. They have the ability to communicate with atoms and molecules, which have consciousness, by the way. And that'll be the end of disease. That'll be the end of homelessness, starvation. We'll be concentrating on achieving our spiritual dharma, which each and every one of us has, as we interact with aliens from other planets. And before long, it's going to be so normal, and everybody's going to go, God, how do we survive without alien contact? And new generations will be born into this. And the first thing they're going to be learning in their educational system is the reality behind our existence, that we are spiritual being in essence, and that this physical sack that we call our bodies, this skeleton, flesh-covered sack, it's temporary. It's got an expiration date, but not our soul. And our consciousness, which is an attribute of the soul, lives on forever. You can't destroy that. So, like I said, I'm waiting to have a mentor help me become my full potential. And there's none available right now, so I'm waiting for contact.
You know, and everything you said is on this timeline, we are being force-fed everything the opposite of that. Everything material. It's all about technology and materialistic things, and living for yourself, and everything that they're pushing on us now through the media. It's all mind control, and to have that all turn around and change would be, such an amazing thing. And I don't know if we would see it in our lifetime without something like a major cataclysm occurring.
Yeah, and I think with everybody on the same page, if they believe that and saw the evidence that I have seen, that those thoughts alone would help activate more UFO sightings, and it's all part of the process. It's up to us, it's up to every individual to find their way to what truth is. And that's not easy, which is why my religion is truth and loyalty, because when you find truth, it will literally confirm itself. Just like with this UFO photograph. When I first saw the spike-like projection in this acorn shape, and that acorn shape matches the Kecksburg UFO, so I literally have captured 10 Kecksburg UFOs on film. But I believe that this pattern of these UFOs, I was meant to find, because I don't know anybody else is as open-minded as I am, and I think the aliens knew that I was going to be there at that particular time and that particular spot, and they knew that I was going to find this pattern and that I would have the guts, the bravery to share that with mankind in whatever fashion I can. And it hasn't been easy because I'm not a professional. Being a graphic designer does not imbue you with any special powers to get your story in these science magazines, which have turned me down repeatedly over the years. But thankfully, the LA Times, the San Diego Union Tribune, they've all featured me on their front page. And yeah, I'm pretty lucky in that regard, but I take it one day at a time, Chris, just plugging away.
Very good.
And guys like you and your website, they're going to help make this shift possible.
I'm hoping that even the most little change I could make, that's important to me to be able to help in any way possible. Now,
there you go.
When you see these rock faces and you talk about that, I find it very compelling that we see these all around the world, and they almost look intentionally carved to be faces, but not only of extraterrestrials, but human beings, animals, these enormous surfaces of rocks that appear to have, formed some kind of face or ancient artwork.
Yeah, that's interesting because it was in '74 that NASA revealed that they had found a face on Mars. And boy, that just a light bulb went off in my head that, you know what, that looks like a face. And the only people who could make that would be aliens because we haven't been to Mars yet. So I sort of kept my eyes open. And next thing I know, I'm planning a art project for my art major in college. And I happened to look at a picture I'd taken of Elko Mountain, and boom, this huge face popped out. Now, I've been a native San Diegan all my life. I have never seen this man-made face, which appears to be surrounded by a perfect circle. And so I showed some friends of mine, and I pointed out the face, and they went, whoa, there's a face on that mountain. And this was in '85, and I started looking for faces everywhere, and sure enough, a few years later, I would take my UFO photograph, and one of the objects was hovering over what I believe is the world's largest natural rock face. And I say natural, but at the same time, it's tongue-in-cheek. There's no telling who made it, as well as this alien boulder that's right behind the spot I took the best UFO photo ever. How can that be there? It's just like, well, aliens, they know what's going on in the future, and they have access to the Akashic records. And anybody listening, you know, it's spelled AKASHIC. And it's very important that I've been aware of this for decades, and I've used it to my advantage, knowing that everything you think, do, and say is being recorded. Guess what? If you're on the same page as the universe and they are watching you, they will straighten the path ahead of you. I mean, I was supposed to have died easily 3 different times, and only the grace of God saved me, Chris. And I think it was for this particular reason. What I'm doing right now, what I'm saying to you and your listeners right now, is that not only does aliens and UFOs exist, but God exists. And I believe I found the signature of God, as well as evidence for his existence, which has been hidden in creation. And this is all on my Facebook page. And it has to do with the number 7. The number 7 apparently is blessed more than all things under heaven. That's God's number. Anybody who's read the Bible knows that the Bible is a book of sevens. Well, guess what? Science confirms that the number 7 permeates every aspect of our existence. There's 7 interstellar molecules, 7 regions of the visible light spectrum, 7 regions of the electromagnetic spectrum, 7 spectral classes of stars, 7 colors in the rainbow, 7 this, 7 that, and it goes on. And that's the other half of the mystery of the Nazca lines. Eric von Däniken didn't point this out, but there's 2 figures at Nazca, the monkey and the duckling figure, who each have an odd amount of fingers, 7. So I first saw that and I go, why 7? And that's when I discovered that the number 7 is permeating every aspect of our existence and literally proves the existence of God. For you agnostics and non-believers, I ask you to have patience and scroll through my entire Facebook page where I list all this information and see if you don't have different feelings afterwards. But keep an open mind, put all your preconceived ideas of what truth is on the side for a moment, and then have a look at this information here and see how it fits into your belief system. Because believe me, if it wasn't for my belief system, none of this would have happened. And it's all because my dad died. My dad had to die for this to happen. I guarantee if he hadn't, I wouldn't have begun my quest for search for answers. And what's really cool, Chris, is that in 2015, my dad was channeled by the world's greatest living psychic, John Edwards, who said, by the way, your dad is taking credit for being the inspiration behind some book you're writing, something about entertainment. And he was spot on, spot on. So I know personally that my dad is alive, and we teamed up. My dad and I are teamed up, and we're working to help change mankind, because my dad was a great humanist. He was a cop who turned his garage into living quarters for a homeless guy on his beat. And he also started a Boy Scout troop right in the heart of Logan Heights, which is all African American. The only white boys there were his 3 sons, and we had the time of our life. So we learned exactly what Martin Luther King said, that you judge somebody by the content of the character and not the color of their skin. And that's a policy that everybody should have when we come face to face with aliens. It doesn't matter what they look like. We are all blessed by God. So we should keep that in mind.
Very good. Now, I understand you have some information about a 1969 encounter between Apollo 11 and aliens on the moon. Could you talk about that?
Right. Well, I had never heard anything about Armstrong and Aldrin being confronted by aliens after they landed on the moon until I had taken my UFO photograph and I started going to bookstores and library bookstores and cells to accumulate all these books on ancient artifacts and sacred places, where I accumulated all this evidence. And one of these books, called Celestial Rays, R-A-I-S-E, lo and behold, here's the transcript of the actual communication between Armstrong, Aldrin, and Cape Cod, and it talks about aliens lined up on the opposite side of a crater, and it floored me. Now, I've never found anywhere else in the thousands of books that I've scanned that has this transcript, which was recorded by hundreds of American ham radio operators who were directly linked to Apollo 11, so that when they switched channels, they were still listening, and thankfully so, because it proved that we had a UFO encounter on the moon, which explains why the astronauts were so stressed out when they landed. They were very quiet, and Armstrong never talked about it, but Aldrin basically admitted it. And to this day, it's sort of out there. And I'm a big fan of Neil Armstrong, and I posted a lot of stuff recently in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, which apparently was so miraculous. Thank gosh they had the right guy in the control seat at the time. That Neil Armstrong, what a character, what a hero. And so anybody who opens up my Facebook page under Michael Orrell, that's the first thing you're going to see, is this transcript that proves that man was on the moon. These people who say that we never landed on the moon, well, why would they talk about a UFO experience if it didn't happen on the moon? So it's up to everybody to find their own belief system in that. And I believe that that's the actual transcript of what happened.
Very interesting. Do you think we have a secret space program with operations on the moon and possibly on Mars?
It's an interesting thing you brought up, because one of our experiments on the moon included crash landing one of our vehicles onto the moon, because we had found earlier that the moon is hollow. It rings like a bell. And so when we crash landed this vehicle on the moon rang for hours. And that's really weird that our satellite, which is so important to Earth, matter of fact, we wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for the moon creating these tidal flows and gives us our seasons. If it wasn't for the moon, we wouldn't have life on Earth. And there's a possibility, according to ancient alien theorists, that the moon is created by aliens and put in that particular position. I mean, right exactly where it is, so that when you have eclipses, that it's perfectly aligned. And as you're going to see on my Facebook page, it's just not this giant marking on the face of the moon, Mar Serenitas, that exactly matches UFOs. There are two other markings on the moon, a giant 150-mile crater on the back side that is an acorn shape, is projecting just like UFOs. And then there is this other, it's called the Ukert crater. And it's been declared absolutely unnatural by Bruce Cornett and others who claim that this marking on the moon is not natural. It couldn't have been. So that's all on my Facebook page as well. So I believe that, according to ancient alien theory, that Eisenhower had actually met with aliens back in the 50s, and we made a deal with them that they could abduct humans as long as they want in exchange for their technology. And I think that's what we got from the Roswell crash. We got infrared, we got circuitry, we got night vision, Kevlar, a bunch of stuff that might not have been in existence had it not been for alien help. And there's no telling if they're actually working right now, because I don't think, and I have met with the Russians, by the way, including Marina Popovich, rest her soul, who was a famous test pilot for Russia. And I was invited up to LA when she was giving her presentation, and I literally blew away their delegation when I showed them that a UFO photo that they had released on the program hard copy exactly matched the projecting triangle at Nazca. They were talking in Russian, and they were all excited. And then sure enough, I got invited to the next talk that Marina Popovich gave, and we exchanged UFO photographs. And she actually held up my UFO photograph, which I call the Inyaha, that's I-N-A-J-A, UFO photo. She actually held that up during her Channel 10 interview. And that's the first time my photograph was on air, was being held in the hands of a famous Russian. And I have a soft spot in my heart for the Russians, because they've done a lot. They've sacrificed cosmonauts just like we sacrificed astronauts, because when you push the envelope, sometimes mistakes are made and people pay for it. I hadn't forgot about Christy McAuliffe, the school teacher who was lost in the Challenger disaster. And, I'm doing this for her as well. That her efforts to expand our knowledge would not be in vain. And the courage that she showed, I'm trying to muster for myself. And I think everybody listening should also step up to the plate and get ready to download some new truth, which is what it is, because as mankind evolves, we make ourselves available to more new truth. We can't stand by, evidence and knowledge from our past. We have to re-examine everything we've learned in context. And that's what I did with the Bible. There's a lot of stuff that was mentioned in metaphysics that contradicts the Bible. And for a while, that really threw me for a loop, but I found evidence to support metaphysics, and that's where I remain.
What are your thoughts on the theories that our planet's elite and the more malevolent, psychotic rulers of this world are basically under the control of extraterrestrials, such as possibly reptilians?
Well, that's a good question. I'm thinking, it's true that there's a possibility that some of the extraterrestrials are not favorable towards mankind, including that famous woodcut from the 14 or 1500s that shows a war in the sky between aliens. Now, I'm under the impression that it's the good aliens who are in charge, and they are the masters of this environment. And I'm sure that there are some other entities from other planets, from other civilizations, who are more into it for themselves and probably have been the ones to rough up humans during their examinations. And yet, my mind always goes back to the fact that there are good aliens out there who have nothing but love and admiration for mankind because we are their descendants. Now, when you look on my Facebook page, you're going to see these crop circles, and there's a reason why they're going to so much trouble for mankind. And I include that as well as the pyramids for them wanting mankind to survive. We would have already had the shift, and mankind would have had to start all over again, but we're not going to do that. This time, aliens have stepped up to the plate. They've intervened. Mankind is growing to the point where we're overpopulating our planet. And guess what? There's a lot of other planets where we can divide our population and start new colonies. And that's part of it. That's where we're heading. And we need to get the mindset that, yeah, let's make contact. Let's start a new planet. And I believe that it's going to be after the shift, when the environment settles down and the climate and weather is back to normal, that we will be resettled on the new land masses, and we will be given new technology, much like the great Serbian scientist Nikola Tesla. He wanted free electricity for everybody, and we should have that right now. But no, it was all about greed. That was Edison, who wanted to make money off of power. But, sometimes money talks and good guys walk, and that's what happened. Nikola Tesla died in poverty as all his research got scattered, which was not taken by the government. But the idea is, we have to work for this. Mankind has to earn this. We can't be given this. We have to earn it. And I often ask the universe, I say, hey, look, help me win this $300 million lotto, and I'll make a film of my story, and we'll take it to every corner of the globe. And the reply back was, no, Mike, you got to earn this the old-fashioned way. You're not winning the lotto. So,
right.
Yeah, just like I said, I'm taking it one day at a time, and that's why I'm thanking you, Chris, for having me on your show and helping to spread the UFO gospel, which the LA Times said that's my job, to spread the UFO gospel. And I'm hoping that somebody out there in your viewing stands will enjoy this and check it out and embrace some of this information, including the fact that aliens are emissaries from God. And the problem is, apparently, in the Pentagon, there's a bunch of old stogies who don't believe aliens are good. They're demonic, which is why they're not following up on these UFO programs that Lou from the Stars decided that he had to quit because they're not going to forward any UFO projects because of their outdated belief system, which is what the problem is right now. That's why the baby boomers of America, Chris, with their courage, their ideas, their willingness to find new answers and not hold on to old, tired dialogue, that's going to help mankind so that eventually generations will grow up with aliens from other planets living next door.
That would be amazing. That would be absolutely fascinating.
Yep.
So, Mike,
and that,
I want to thank you so much for joining us. That was fascinating information. Before you head out, tell everybody about your book, Aliens from Above, The Last in Line.
Right. I wrote this book 2 years ago, and the first half of the book is fiction. I put a Native American Indian into a UFO, and they train him in metaphysics, and he helps design the giant face on our local mountain, which I've named Orrell. But the second half of the book is strictly nonfiction, and it talks exactly about what happened in my life and the steps that led to my discovery of the UFO Rosetta Stone that has literally unraveled the UFO, the Nazca Line, and the crop circle mystery. And I believe that with all my heart, and that eventually this is going to become world known, and it's going to change mankind. We're going to be working with aliens, and we're going to be very happy we did. Believe me.
Well, you heard
Chris,
it, folks.
thank you so much for having me on your show, Mr. Matthew. I really appreciate that. And
that was excellent, Mike. I want to thank you again for joining us. Everybody go check out Mike's Facebook. I'm going to leave the link in the description. And, Mike, you have a great night.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Take care.